for a visual design role. And you know those cards that they have on e-commerce sites that have like Amazon and all these other ones where they have like the price or like in the other recommendation section, right? That you
Mhm.
see in a sense. So they asked me about the cards and how would I design that hierarchy, right? And when I came back to them, they asked me, okay, so what if the title of the card, what if a person decides to put in 200 words? How would you design that state? How would you break that design? And, you know, there was like a lead of visual design in there and there was a UX designer in there. And this is hilarious. I told them, I said, well, we need to think about this first when it comes to system thinking. Is there like a character limit on this? Like, how is that user flow and journey progression for them to put a bunch of words in there? Do we stop that, right? Do we talk to the engineering team about that and put like a 20 character limit or something for these words so they can get creative themselves? And it's funny because the UX designer is like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. Well, I didn't think. And I said, look, I know this is a pseudo design challenge, right? But you always need to think about these things when it comes to systems thinking. Because when you're designing something or you're automatically assuming, you're like neglecting the UX side of things, right? And I think you know this too, that you're neglecting like the back end UX side of things, development or you know, coding side of things on how these things work when you're just designing a random thing.
Yeah.
Because most people are going to come in contact with this and most people are going to read this stuff in a certain way. And I told them that. They was like, okay, just for now, just think about how would you design it for that. And I said, it's easy. And of course, I told them the answer on how I would do that. But, you know, with this, I think this is great, right? I think this is really great when you think about it. So Lisa told me this. And to me, like when you think about this, right? Like, don't you think this would be good questions for like engineers as well? Like if they was in an interview, I wonder if engineers have technical interviews because I'm pretty sure they do things
Yeah,
like
yeah, they do.
so when you think about it with design, I remember Alicia, she told me that she had, and I'm just gonna say this, and I'll let you go, I promise. But Lisa, my instructor told me that she had a design challenge, well, a whiteboarding challenge where they said you need to design an experience for a building that has 25 stories, but there's only 3 elevators. How would you design a user experience and how would you work around that?
Mhm.
And you know, I had to think about that for a while because you know, they're still on my mind today, right? On how will I design the user experience? Because of course, it's like asking the questions though on who lives there, right? Is this like a police station? Is this like a mall? Is this like a place where you just have like all these mixtures of businesses, right? A building that's leasing all these, you know, floors to like different companies as well. So like, what are we dealing with here in a sense? So with me, you know, I answer my own question, right? It's an apartment. Okay, great. It's an apartment. All right, what's the age group and the demographic that lives in this apartment? And why is there only 3 elevators in this building in the first place, right?
Mhm.
Like, how does that work? So for me, this is what I was thinking. I was thinking that, you know, these are the kind of people, and this is how we're grouping into almost like following the Solving Product Design Challenges book, but this is how we group our demographic this year. So we're automatically, you know, assuming, or we automatically got our data back that the people that live in an apartment are ages 25 all the way up to 71, right? So it's
Mhm.
25 to 71. These are the people that hold certain occupations. I'm not going to go into that, but you have these people like these yuppies, right? That have certain occupations. Then you have people that work in coffee shops and stuff. And then you have all these older people who might be retired. But this part gets a little tricky because a lot of people would like to believe that older people have disabilities, like physical disabilities, right? But
Mhm.
what about that person that's standing up all day? Or what if that person that just got into like a car accident or something? Or what
Mhm.
if this person has scoliosis, right? What if it's a natural physical disability that they can't walk as well? So now that we're thinking about the structure of how we're gonna, you know, accommodate all these different people, I would say for our health fitness people, we're gonna put them away further from the elevator since they want to get an exercise, right?
Mhm.
Bam. For people that have disabilities, they are gonna be on those top 3 floors for the elevator. So no matter what they're paying, you know, if the people are paying the most, right? Because I know it's going to be kind of like in depth, right? When you get into what they're paying, who stays on the top floor, who stays on the bottom floor. You know what I mean? Because it's the way that condos work. And I'm not going to get that deep into it. But still, the people that stay on the top floor, the 3 floors that the elevators are on, these are going to be the people with disabilities. We have a hard time walking and moving, right? The people who are really health conscious and the people who want to run up and down the stairs, right? All that kind of stuff and get a workout, they're going to be further from the elevators. The people who I'm going to say are tired, like they spend all day doing physical activity and labor and work, right? These are going to be the people that might be, you know, 2 or 1 or 2 or 3, you know, floors above those elevators or right by those elevators, you know, in a sense for that. So and especially when it comes into the designing part of it as well, and how we would add more elevators or makeshift elevators in a building, that would be a pretty good question as well. But once again, those are more like engineering questions, in my opinion,
Mhm.
versus like user experience, right? Because with my user experience, is mainly, you see how I did it, right? So it's mainly approaching it in a user research way to figure out who stays there, who has what disability, right? What age groups are we dealing with? What kind of occupations are we dealing with too? Because that matters as well,
Mhm.
depending on how tired they are, or people who have like long commutes and long transits. I mean, transit commutes as well, right? And then going into the where we're going to place all these different floors as well for these certain people to accommodate them, in a sense. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. And like I said, I've been thinking about that for a while, and I think about stuff like that a lot for a while, and asking these kind of questions, you know, because if it was a police station, it would be the same thing. If it was like a nursery or something, you would need to find a way to, you know, once again, position all these places and floors. So that's pretty much it. What are your thoughts on that, by the way?
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting challenge and everything like that. So I guess it brings into a bit one of those trick questions to see if you are going to just try to jump right into the solution, or if you're going to actually think about, what are the constraints and context of this problem. So considering things like you said, who's living there, what's the use case, what kind of structure is this, why they only have three elevators, and how many rooms they have and stuff like that. All of that will come into context, and it helps to see what type of thinker you are theoretically. I know a lot of people, or some people, don't like these sort of questions because they seem too theoretical, too just weird. Um, because like Google has a lot of these questions for like engineers, like how many tennis balls can fit in the school bus, um, so I guess it's along those lines, and there's a use for those things in an interview, but overall, I think it's an interesting thing for design, because like I've been reading Design of Everyday Things, and so that book is almost completely around just the design of random objects like a car, doors, stuff like that, thermostat, because those things are more timeless, and they can be applied to the digital interfaces, and it's really all about how you think. It's like how you do you realize that your conceptual model of things is going to be different than the average person's, and are you going to take that into consideration when you're designing something? So um, I guess that's what those sort of questions are trying to get at. So I can certainly understand that. Yeah.
There's a saying that I have that I made up, by the way. Feel free to quote me on this. But when you're designing something and it's like 50-50 if the audience is going to get it or not, it's actually 100% that they won't get it, pretty much. So you might as well make that affordance. Just like
uh,
with YouTube, right? I don't know if you've been on YouTube on a mobile app, but you notice that they like change the architecture, right? Where the
mhm.
structure, where their comment section is
Yeah, yeah,
put.
yeah, yeah.
So instead of being all the way down, it's all the way at the top. But
Hmm.
apparently, a lot of people like myself kept scrolling down, and they
Hmm.
figured that out. So they actually made an affordance. Like, go on your phone right now if you can and look at it. They
Yeah,
made
I
an
know what you
affordance
mean.
saying our comment section is actually up there,
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
much, and it's like in light blue as well. I was like,
Uh-huh.
that's pretty. That's pretty cool, and I'm glad they figured that out. But they should have, you know. And once again, I would love, if you want to, I would love to write a Medium article about this on network, and even showing like the YouTube thing, you know. But I wish they would have figured that out in the first place, and just been safe about that, you know,
Hmm.
saying that, hey, instead of making a pop up, right? Because a pop up is only like temporary when you think about it. It only lasts for like
Hmm.
what, 2 seconds. So a lot of people won't catch on to that. They should have put that there in the first place, right? Saying, hey, our comment section moved all the way up to there, pretty
Hmm.
much. And once users started getting, really used to it, then they could have moved it in a sense. But yeah, that's
Hmm.
pretty much it. So, if it's 50-50 on whether users are going to get it or not, automatically just assume it's 100%. And, and just make that affordance. And
Yeah.
don't worry about making things look cool. By the way, design of everyday things, and I can see why Debbie has been in there for a long time, because I keep thinking all the time, and I just want to mention this, is how are people in UX design for like 20 to 30 to 40 years? How is that even possible? Because to me, the way that we look at user experience design, or like strictly in a lens of like, and I'm pretty sure you don't, but for some weird reason, I keep having this habit of looking at it in a lens of like digital products,
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
some weird reason, like digital products. But we never think about the design of phones, how that feels
Hmm.
ergonomically in someone's hand. We
Hmm.
never think about mouse, right? Like by
Hmm.
Logitech that we use, or even like the keyboards. Like, you know, someone had to get together with an industrial designer to figure this out and figure how that works and test it out with actual people, right? In order to,
Exactly.
even when you think of this, like a top, a lid, and the engineer had to make this in order for me to screw it off successfully and know what to do with it. Like, that's pretty deep. Even when you think
Yeah.
about bottled water, right? Look,
Yeah.
you know, if you came,
Like the grip on the water bottle and stuff like that, all of that is design. Like, it's so crazy when you start seeing it from a wider perspective. Like,
yeah,
it really that's what really excites me about design, is like it literally applies to everything. Yeah, like the affordance of, you know, the little dip at the top, you
yeah.
know, automatically just gets you think, put your hand around it, right? Those things just instantly get your concept around
But what if bottled water came in this, just like this Febreze package, and it was something
it.
that
You
would
have to
make sense,
spray it
right?
in your
A lot
mouth.
of people would get a lot of people would get mad at that. They're like, this is stupid. Let me just take the top off. But even when you take the top off, then it's like, okay, how can I get to the rest of the water, right?
Yeah.
You have to think about things like that. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, man,
Yeah, design is crazy, man. Like, people don't realize, at least a lot of people, you know, new to UX design don't realize that our current concept of UX design is just comes from human computer interface, you know, human computer interaction, which was a whole field of research, you know, when computers were new, when computers were took up a whole room, and you had to, you had to get, you know, a degree to figure out how to use this giant thing. But design in general is simply about, you know, realizing it's kind of a cross between psychology, anthropology, and just looking at people, observing people, and engineering, you know, seeing how.
don't forget that, because I'm
Yeah.
surprised a lot of people don't mention that it is related to engineering,
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
functionality on how things work and how people perceive things and how you don't break stuff as well. Right?
Yeah. You have
Process.
to realize how it's going to be made realistically,
Yeah.
and, you know, how those limitations affect what you can communicate through the actual design of it.
Yeah, that's why people hate Dribble so much, because you know, it's the way that things look, right? Instead of how they
Yeah.
work, pretty
It's
much.
just around the aesthetics rather than what's the realistic engineering of it. Yeah.
I think, and I just want to say this. I think with UX, well, inside of tech, because I know that user experience design, when you think about it, it can be applied to anything, right?
Mhm.
It can be applied. Like, think about it. It can be applied for like an event. I think you actually did that too. Like for the arcade, you had a user experience case study for like the number of customers coming in the arcade and the way that they interact with stuff. And it
Mhm.
seemed like you were kind of creating that user experience for that just event and that experience in general, which is pretty deep to me, in my
Mhm.
opinion. Because I wish I saw more case studies like that. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
more case studies. So, by the way, the case study club. What I noticed from Jan, the guy who created the case study club, is that the thing that I appreciate about him is that he actually finds like all these case studies that are kind of left field or kind of cutting edge. I'm not saying that case studies that are unrealistic. They are realistic, but they go outside of the realm in the scope of how boot camp grads and college grads and people mainly in the industry perceive user experience design. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
what a case study can be. So instead of creating digital mock-ups, this person is going about it in this way.
Mhm.
So that's why I pretty much think he chose the Cloud Charts case study, in my opinion, because it does, when you think about Cloud Charts, it does deal with philosophy. It does deal with like experimentation on how people are perceiving music. And it's not, and I'm really happy about this. And I just want to thank you on helping me create it as well. But I am really excited and happy about that case study. And I'm really and I really feel like great accomplishment for it, because I'm pretty sure you see a bunch of redesigned case studies on Medium, right? I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure you come across them all the time. And to me, they're not really um, ambitious. They're not really going into the why and thinking that much deep into it. And I
Yeah.
think you would agree on that, right? It's like kind of lame in my opinion, because they're like changing just certain functions and certain features instead of how could we do like a major overhaul, right?
Mhm.
How can we really dig in deep on what people actually want and what can make more money and what can really be a game changer for people? And that's what I thought of with Cloud Charts. Because I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this all the way. And it's going to be something that could be very, not only aspirational, but something that could be conventional as well, but
Mhm.
something that could just really push the boundaries, right, on how people perceive music. Because there's stuff out there, but I don't think anything has reached that, level yet, in my opinion. Like
Yeah.
even
Definitely.
Bandcamp, or even this other site where it's like these different bubbles and links. It's almost like a taxonomy, right? When you think about it. But instead they use bubbles. So where you can put like an artist named Kanye West and it'll branch off and show you other artists that's similar to him in a
Mm,
sense. Or if you want to know an artist that you got into and you want to hear more music like that, it'll show you other artists in that same vein, right?
mm.
Even though once again it's not there yet. So I just
What's that called? Check that out.
um it was on a video. I'll send it to you I'll send you the YouTube video. Matter of fact, I'll send it to you in text message if you don't mind. But it's
Okay.
this guy called Alpha Music, and he was talking about how to discover new music, and I will show you that as well. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So I just want to say though, when it comes to cutting edge case studies, like with you, I'm just wondering why people haven't created case studies for like being an event coordinator, like
Hmm.
setting up the event for people to try out that product. Like what leads them, because I know it's like a marketing thing now and like an event coordinating thing. But what if they did add UX methodologies in there, right? What if they
Yeah.
did, for this, I actually had to do a lot of field research studies. So I went to events, right? I really observed the way people, really got involved at events. But then I noticed something. I noticed that there's always people who don't talk at events and they're always on their phone. And these people are kind of left in the corner, or you have the awkward person, right? So you're defining your personas, right? You have this awkward person who tries to talk to people, but they can't. So how can we make it better for them in a sense? Oh, this was a new method that I thought of, bringing less of the focus on people who are the most extroverted and pushing those extroverted people by doing X, Y, and Z. You get what I'm saying? Almost like similar to cloud charts in a sense, on making music discover the users instead of the other way around, right?
Yeah.
Uh, there's another one, the last one that I want to mention to you as well. Um, there was this plane grid, and this is more like product strategy, but still. And I think I sent you the video. You probably haven't watched it yet. But there was this from Remote Design Week. There was this assumption tracking workshop, and you're laughing. You know it's true, right?
Yeah,
There's this
probably.
assumption tracking workshop, and so I use this video. I'm actually going to add this video to like my diary study for my cloud charts case study as well. So I'm sending you this right now, just so you know, just so you can get it in your text. So this is the video, and I want you to watch this entire video. But he mentions the product that I'm talking about in that video. Cool?
Mhm.
Just so
Okay.
you know. But anyway, on a plane grid submittal case study, he was saying that what they do is they work for construction companies, right? And that a lot of people in construction companies, they hate doing submittals, basically. And he said, I'm not going to give you the whole rundown of what submittals actually is, but when you have submittals, this is, you just want to make sure that you get these documents right? Because if you
Mhm.
don't get these submittals and these documents right, buildings and other stuff can collapse from like engineers receiving those information and all that. So he said that what we tried to do was, and he was explaining like the product design process. I mean, not the product, but the product cycle, right? On how you like test, iterate, all that kind of stuff. He said we didn't have time for that, unfortunately. And
Mhm.
he said that we actually thought of this idea to actually take like the stuff that they were submitting and put it into an Excel spreadsheet pretty much and try it out then. So he
Mhm.
said that once we did it, we actually sent it out to a couple of people. And it was funny because he called that method, of sending it out to a bunch of people. He said, you know what, how Bender, what he refers to humans on Futurama, if you ever seen that show, he said, so we came up with this idea called Project Meatbag, right? So he was like, we just take all these, people's like data and we put it into Excel spreadsheets so they can see it clearly.
Mhm.
And he said that he was talking about how they kind of iterated and kind of tweaked a bunch of things, right, in Excel spreadsheet. And then he said, he said the first time was painful enough. So we actually brought in a bunch of data entry people to do it. So he said that with this, from our feedback, and it's actually once again, and I just want to say this because I can't get, I know that when I talk about your portfolio, like how it looks visually and stuff, that is not the best, but I wholeheartedly mean this, that the arcade case study was probably my favorite one, in my opinion. And that I really love it because to me, I think more designers should show what they're doing in order to contribute to society outside of just digital products. You know what I mean? But for actual experience and actually meaningful experience to even help out a digital product. Think about that, right? Or to like promote it as well. But he was saying that a lot of our clients was really crying because we were saving them like weeks of time to just them doing something in like 30 seconds or like 1 minute. And he said that at the end of it, he also talks about, which you probably would do too. He also talks about where he talks about this article that they were featured in, right? On like most innovative construction tech. And he said we were actually on this same article, on the same list as a robot lifting drywall pretty much. And he said, you have this piece of advanced technology doing something very simple, but we were doing something pretty advanced with something that was really simple. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, isn't that deep? Like when you
Yeah,
think,
definitely. Yeah, man. It's like, because I think it's not exactly service design, but basically, I kind of retroactively called it service design for the arcade. But yeah, when I found out that it was that's actual area of design, I got that from the Nielsen Norman website and stuff like that, where they go into how service design is an entire landscape of design agencies and consultancies who actually help people. There's two sides of it. One side, we help businesses, with their employer processes. Employee processes. So helping the actual employees go through the business itself. Because if your business is like, messy, if your employees don't really know what to do half the time, then your business product is not going to be very good. It doesn't matter how good your design is, of your product is. If your employees, don't have a good policies, don't have good XYZ in place, then your product is going to suffer. So that's one part of service design. And then the other part is designing an actual service, looking at, like you said, the full landscape of how people come into a product, which kind of goes into marketing, how people get introduced to a product, as well as, what to do after your product, the other things that they do in your area. Or if you just have a product that is a service, that is a public service, or, you walk into a store, or, buying something off a bookshelf or something like that, So all of that is things that you actually design. So definitely want to see more people talk about that those types of design, that area of expertise.
they should. And I think, and I even read in the Google document on what a service designer, not Google document, but like when I researched it on Google, they were like, a service design is pretty much like a customer experience manager, but they know product design well, right? And that they're pretty much like the liaison between marketing and all these teams to bring a really great service to that product, like you were mentioning in a sense. And I was like, dang, they really, I'm thinking about this. This role must really deal with a lot of, and you have to have really good interpersonal skills to be in that role. Because I know they say that it's about us, you know what I mean? But I still feel like the person who might be talented, they don't have to have the best interpersonal skills. In a sense, you get what I'm saying, as a UX designer, even though that matters once again a lot for us. But I think with the service designer skill, like, you really have to be on your A game, especially communicating with marketing, product management, and all these other people in all these different departments, to really bring that cohesive, just overall experience to getting into that product as well. One more thing I want to mention is that I actually created a role that I would like to see at Flubby, by the way, we created. This will probably be for, and I'm going to be honest, this will probably be for someone who's a little bit more experienced, or someone who has nothing but time on their hands and they just like experimenting with stuff. But I want to create a role called UX scientist, pretty much.
Okay.
So you know how Google, and I'm pretty sure you heard about this, but Google has a team, like a dedicated team that does nothing but break stuff all day. Like, have you heard of that role?
Somewhat.
Yeah. So you know why they do that, right? Pretty much why they're breaking stuff all day. Because if like a natural disaster happens within the world, that Google, their servers are still going to be up. So they create like all these like, weather simulations, right? Like, it's just a lot of wild stuff. But they just do that all day and they test these results. So I think with a UX scientist, a lot of times I hear, even with Jonathan Courtney, because I saw you comment on his video about the golden age of UX is dead. I was thinking to myself, I was like, why do companies always rely on product designers to just experiment? I understand about meeting business needs and goals, but why does it always have to be, an experiment and putting something out there to see if it'll be a product market fit, Because I feel like money and time can really be kind of allocated into other different resources, in my opinion. And you just hire another team, separately, where a product manager can go to, where a developer can go to, right? And they can experiment with these things, and you can, report it back to the team to see if it'll be successful. So I think with a UX scientist, this will be a person that really knows heavily on research. So they're collaborating with everyone, but their main part is to really experiment and really see how things work and what doesn't work. So think about the Snapchat thing, right? Imagine if Snapchat had a UX scientist and they only sent it out to like 5,000 people. And those 5,000 peoples was in like the simulation, in a sense. So they're creating, and I know this sounds kind of weird, but they created like a simulation that these 5,000 peoples was in. And then with that simulation, it would say, oh, we're receiving like a lot of backlash. Oh, we're going to lose stocks and all this, right? Oh, we're going to lose this, that, and the third. Or even when it comes to data analysts as well. Like when data analysts, because you know how Facebook works, how they use their data analysts. is that it's almost like similar to us, right? How we come up with product recommendations and how we provide impact. So if a data analyst finds a trend saying, oh, you know, this is really good for our market right now. This is going to make us money right now, right? Then that's impact because the product manager is going to use it and that will really help out your team that you're on. But if you're predicting this trend of like people in North Korea and they're going to be an upcoming market, that's not impact because it's 2 years from now and we don't even know if they're going to be an upcoming market, right? Like we don't even know if they're going to get into a war with the US, right? Like when you think about it. But what if a person that's a data analyst brought that trend up and they tested it out? Because if you think about it, it might not be 2 years from now. It might be something that could happen now and we can get on it, right? And experiment with it as well. So we do it and we're like, oh, snap, we struck gold in a sense. Okay, let's report this back to the product team. Let's report this back to the shareholders and all of that. Let's go ahead and try to push it out into the second beta testing. So that's what I would use a UX scientist for. Because they, like I said, these are people that normally deal with like the science of it, the research of it. They would work like botanists work, right? They would work like well, I'm just going to say botanists for now, but they would work like botanists work, or people like astronomers, the way that they view stars, and they report back on certain things that they see, or people that scientists, I think they're like geologists, maybe. I don't know the name for it, but people that, they do studies on earthquakes, you know what I mean? And try to figure out, how can we build certain things or get together with engineers so we can, withstand earthquakes. So with us, dealing with like viruses, right? Dealing with like failed patches, dealing with, breaking designs as well, right? Dealing with shipping stuff out, in a simulation once again, and kind of having that simulation respond to us in a very negative or positive way, saying, because machine learning is a thing, right? So why not use it towards that as well? But saying, your stocks are going to drop and people are going to be writing about this, that, and the third. Or, you're going to lose your market that was really your dedicated servers. You know what I mean? And all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, man.
People don't have to guess and waste money.
Yeah, there's several things for that. Like, because I just did a podcast and a blog around, or at least including that, in terms of how augmented and virtual reality will affect us. Is that one thing that people don't really realize is that you can simulate entire like systems, cities, worlds, in these different systems with real people or with, just AI that seems close enough to real people. So you can actually see, hey, do you think you like communism? All right, live in a real communistic society. So you see that how that is for real. And you'll be able to actually simulate everything from different politics to, different design things, different types of city architectures, living in space, all these different really, really interesting, I guess, futures and fantasies that we think about all the time. You can actually live out these realities. And that's going to go a long way into how to make progress, especially if we actually use these towards making progress, is, getting the data from it and making decisions in the real world or base reality, from those simulations. I think that's super powerful. That's definitely something I wanted to do with Flubby. To the point where, and this is going, off in a tangent, but
no, not at all. Keep going.
I was thinking about like, I would want like when the end goal, not even an end goal, but just where we want to go with Flubby is creating an entire operating system and maybe even entire hardware, where it's based on quantum computers, where it just simulates, different things. So the very structure of Flubby will be simulating different realities and different systems so that you can more realistically understand how all these nuanced things in our world works. And I think that will be a fundamental like change in how we think about computing, how we think about information, how we think about just the world in general. And it was crazy because I was literally just thinking about that like a couple days ago. And then there's another side I was thinking about this from. What was it? I think I got this from Debbie. Probably did, but UX design architecture. So instead of calling yourself a designer, calling yourself an architect, because right now, because a design is kind of been, like we talked about earlier, been co-opted into thinking is just for visual or aesthetics or something like that. Whenever you tell a layman, hey, I'm a designer, they think that you're an artist, right? You're just drawing things or whatever. But if you call yourself an architect, then people realize, hey, this is more of a technical type of field, or more of a research driven field, or more of a you just think it just has a different conceptual model. So calling our people architects will hopefully clear up some of the misunderstanding of what UX design is. So people go into it not with the expectation of just visual aesthetics and everything like that, but of actual study, of actual, I guess, technical aspects of what makes people, how people think, and how to make things, how to engineer things around people's psychologies and stuff like that. So yeah, all that, I'm definitely super excited about that, man.
Yeah, man. I just think that, to me, it feels like a lot of companies just waste stuff with their design team. And it's like they just get people to iterate and iterate and iterate over again. Even with me, right, when I was working for Humanitas and they were trying to figure out where to go for the dashboard, they kept getting me to iterate and iterate over again. I was thinking that this has to be a better way. Because even when you watch some case studies, it's like you see people do like 50 iterations and stuff. And it's not bad. I think you should explore and discover. But it's like, how can we get away from that point where you don't have to do that, where you can have like a theory or something be tested on, this is the way that we should go. And we should probably create 5 more iterations to see how that will work, in a sense, just to make it better and more streamlined. Because like I said, with companies, it's always this experimentation kind of thing. And it's always this, oh, we need to go in this direction. Like even reading Hack and Grove, you hear that a lot. That, oh, we need to go in this direction. But what if a UX scientist can figure that already, Because it might be something very simple that a lot of people miss. Like BitTorrent, for example. I don't know if you read Hack and Grove or not. But in this one, so they have like actual case studies in there, by the way. But there's this one case study while they were trying to figure out why users didn't sign up for BitTorrent subscription feature, right? And they were figuring out, they were like, why is no one subscribing to this? Why is no one using this subscription service? So when they finally asked users, the users were like, we didn't even know a subscription service existed. Like, what? And it's like, and like, you'll be surprised, man. Like all these companies like Google that you hear about, and all these companies that hire the smartest people and hire people from like Carnegie Mellon and all these other places. It's like when you think about it, it's kind of, it's like when you think about it, it's kind of lazy, right? Like when you think about it, they make the biggest mistakes and they don't change because they have a certain system and a certain thing for working. And I just want to see your thoughts on this because I talked to someone about this. I talked to someone about adding value within the organization and kind of pushing back. And have you heard of the movie called The Devil Wears Prada, or even the book?
Yeah.
Have you seen the movie at all?
Yeah, I've seen the movie.
Okay, so the reason why the main character ends up, surpassing the woman that works, the other secretary that works in that office, because if you think about it, the secretary was a yes man in a sense, right? And the reason why that main character got hired, even though she was like very irreverent towards fashion, right? And she didn't understand it starting out, and she didn't care for it, because all she was trying to do was just get an internship so she can become a journalist, is because Miranda saw something in her, basically. Miranda saw that she could speak out and push back, and she could make the impossible possible and make things happen. So by Miranda, even though Miranda didn't say that, because by the way, I watched a video essay that pretty much explained all that. But Miranda saw that, and that's why she hired her. Because I know a lot of people still to this day are like, why did Miranda hire this person in the first place? That has no respect for what you and other people do. You know what I mean? And she seems very clumsy coming in as well, in a sense. And she doesn't fit into that culture. Because a lot of times in tech with us, what is it always? Oh, you don't fit into that culture. Oh, you can't bring this, that, and the third, right? Everyone, they want like a generalist designer. They want someone to elevate their design, just like with Bridget, right? In a sense. But it's like Miranda saw something in her, in a sense. So when you think about all these companies like IBM, and even like, because I think I was talking about this to a friend, I was like, with IBM, and with all these like homogenized organizations, it's like, yeah, you might have smart people working there, but you have to, when they're working there and they're figuring out all these business decisions, it's like, it's the IBM way, right? It's the Google way. It's this way that I've learned, in a sense, or it's this way that I've learned and this way that I'm doing stuff as well. Because it's like they're too scared to kind of challenge the status quo, or they're too scared to do certain things. And that's why I think when you talk about diversity as well, this is when diversity comes into it. Because I think with diversity, and I think you even said this as well, right? I remember this quote, that diversity shouldn't be used to fill quota, but it should be used to challenge ideas. And should be used for inspiration. And you said that, which is true, because when you bring all these newer people in that might not have, that experience working within the industry, I bet you 100% that they can bring in new insights about certain things. I bet you if Twitter brought in someone like you, or someone who wanted to get into UX, but they were on Twitter all day. I bet you they'll bring Twitter a bunch of new insights and make them a lot of money. Of course, will this person need polish as far as like having that business acumen? Would this person need polish as far as like, collaborating with people and talking and doing certain things on a job? Of course, right? But I think that all that stuff can be taught. And if you put that time and investment into them, then they can make that money. And I think you mentioned that about Fluffy, because when you were saying that about Fluffy, that I want to bring all these different people in, right? All these people to come in and do certain things. I was thinking, okay, maybe starting out, we might need people with experience, because if we have this mixture of people who don't know what to do, then it's going to be clashing with the people that are professional. But when I thought about it, I was like, maybe that's not a bad thing, because then those people that are professional, it will cause them to up their game up more. And it will cause them to kind of, develop a different perspective about certain things as well, too. And it will cause them to kind of broaden their horizons and their scope. That's pretty deep, right? Like when you think about it. Because it's like, oh, we need more professional people with professional people. Oh, we need people, just like we Year Up as well. Oh, we need people that think this certain way to move this certain way. And I feel that if you keep having that homogenized kind of thinking in an organization, then your organization is going to eventually collapse. And you're not going to get, another demographic that you always wanted, or you're not going to get this, that, and the third of what you wanted your company to actually be as well. So, yeah, I just wanted to bring that up to you as well, as far as like bringing diversity and people just kind of being stuck in that system and having that same way of thinking. Because just like with Debbie, what she said about me, that it seems like I have a lot of bad habits just by looking at my LinkedIn profile, and it's going to kind of be hard to teach. When you think about it, isn't that the same way with people that's experienced as well? That they have habits. So I'm not going to call them bad habits, but they have habits as well, where you're trying to get them to think a certain way, or you're trying to get them to do a certain thing, and they can't do it. So, and I'll just say this, for the company that I'm in, Dandy, the person who created that user interface for Dandy, his name is Javante. He's a Black designer, and he actually taught himself how to do visual design. Now, to me, that's completely elusive, because I'm still having a hard time fathoming the thought of someone that can teach visual design to themselves, right? Or even graphic design. And I'm pretty sure you know why, right? Because of like choosing your colors, choosing the way that you display things, with typography, right? Like your margins, your spacing, and all that. Like, to me, a lot of that stuff takes time, and I think you need actual, what do you call these people? Like someone to give you feedback on that stuff, in my opinion. But it's like Javante, he taught all that stuff to himself, in a sense.
I think it's just practice. Yeah, just practice and showing. And when you create something, show it to other people, see what they think and stuff like that. No ego with what you created, and just keep working on it.
And he created Dandy from scratch as well. And he said that the reason why they hired him at Humanitas because his design was different, pretty much. And it wasn't like everything else on the market. And they said, that's the reason why we brought you in, because your design is like really different and we're really excited for it, And we wanted you to bring like a different perspective and a different voice to it as well.
That's
so like I said, I see what you mean by Fluffy, not mattering who you're bringing in, because it's true. Like who gives a shit if the person has a degree? Who gives a shit if the person has wrote a book or not? You know what I mean? Like who cares? Like for me, if I see potential in this person and I see that they're like really hungry and they want to make something happen, and I'm pretty sure you're going to be the same way too. You know what I mean? And that they like live, breathe, and sweat this stuff. Like they're constantly analytical, and even though they might need some polish professional wise, that hell yeah, we're going to bring them in. Especially, well, I think this thing is going to matter to me the most. I don't know what would matter to you, and I would really love to hear your thoughts on this, and also ask you this question, leading it to everything that I just talked about as far as like diversity, right, and challenging the status quo, and not following these same templates that companies are following as well. So I want to ask you, what would you look for out of a candidate who didn't have no experience? So someone who was kind of we both have experience, don't get me wrong, because we worked in different companies and organizations. But let's think about ourselves starting out at Year Up. And let's think about that we were like young and hungry. We still are, right? But all the way back then in Europe, like 5 years ago, when we were like really ambitious, when we really didn't know how stuff works, and we were just trying to try any and everything, right? And, someone like us came along and we saw people like, Elijah and Carrie, or even Maurice, and we were like, okay, these are some people that we want to invest in. To you, what are the things that you would look for? What are like just one or two traits? Because to me, the things that I would look for is someone that's very punctual and dedicated. I'm actually going to add both of those because I think they go hand in hand. Someone who's punctual and very dedicated to making sure that they're going to meet deadlines, to making sure they can come on work on time, and they really respect time as well.
Yeah.
That they don't come late, that they are really dedicated to something where they won't feel afraid to ask for help. And then I think too, someone who just has a drive and a passion to do something. So even if you are an out of the box thinker, even if you are a person, once again, that might be a little bit eccentric, right? In the way that you present yourself and your ideas,
Hmm.
that once again, I think that can be polished, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think you can polish all that stuff. But if you really show that drive and you go beyond just getting a paycheck, but you show, and I'm not asking anyone to be a slave to their desk, you know what I mean? Or like Google overwork people and keep them at the company. I'm not asking any of that. But someone who can really think of these ideas and wake up in this eureka moment and they're calling another coworker or they're sending them an email at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And like that kind of thing is like accepted, right? It's not frowned upon. Even if that other person doesn't want to be bothered, but still, it's not frowned upon, but it's like appreciated, that
Hmm.
kind of level of thinking. That, oh my God, I just had an aha moment or I just had a eureka moment. This is what we can do, which is what scientists do. That's why, they get a lot of respect in their community
Hmm.
because, people that work at NASA, they're dedicated to a lot of this stuff, right? I'm
Exactly.
not saying that they're slaves to their work, but like, just like Neil deGrasse Tyson, like his mind is always ever changing. His
Hmm.
mind is always flowing, just like ours, right? And I think that you should always give people, you you should always give people a chance like that, and you should never put them in a regular or conventional work environment, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Never,
For real.
ever, ever, ever. But what are your thoughts on that? What are two traits that you look for, and what are your thoughts about everything that I just said about diversity as well?
Yeah. I guess going backwards. Definitely for Flubby, when we have our own business and everything like that. Um, the number one, just like what you said, is passion. I would definitely look for people who have that passion, that interest in doing something. It doesn't necessarily have to be like to my extent, to where like I have this driven purpose. I'm going to change the world, right? Because I know a lot of people don't necessarily have that. But at least like you're really interested, really curious. I think curiosity is a good stand-in for passion, until you find your own passion. So definitely that will be the number one thing. Number two would be low ego. People who aren't afraid to like admit, their stuff is not great, or that, who can take feedback, who can take criticism, because especially when you're moving fast, when you're doing things that are really different that's out there, you have to be like, okay, this didn't work. All right, this didn't work. We have to change and go to another thing. And I don't need people who are, number one, either hurt because this stuff didn't work, or two, most importantly, who want to think that their thing works, but like they just don't understand it. I don't know what the weird word for that. I think basically arrogance, right? Where you
Yeah.
think that your thing works and you just people haven't recognized it yet, right? That could be all fine and dandy. But if the results are out there, like people aren't liking this thing, people don't enjoy it and stuff like that, then that has to go. So definitely passion, and then low ego. And I'm gonna say a third, because rule of three. And I would say something like adaptiveness, which is ability to change, ability to grow, to evolve, because evolution is you know that's the whole point of life, to evolve and keep moving, keep growing, keep changing. And especially in these times with technology and everything that's going on, things are going to be changing so much. And so we have to be able to take what's happening and adapt to it, and change on the drop of a pin if needed. you know so those are the number three things right there. um, and then the next thing you said about just diversity, definitely diversity in thought is super, super important. And I think what I said to you, I got that from my kind of mentor slash founder for the Employed Toy, the last startup I was at. It was a HR technology startup, and his thing was that diversity is more than just it's more than just a quota. It shouldn't be what you look like. It should be your background, what you think, how you think, and what you're thinking and stuff like that. And when you have a diversity in thought, that's far more powerful. And getting people from different backgrounds by default gets people from different cultures, gets people from different you know um, neighborhoods and stuff like that. So by default, when you look at how people actually think, then you can get a much richer understanding of how people are thinking, and you can solve more important problems. Because a big problem with technology today is that there's a lot of products out there that are just feels vapid or just feels like short-sighted because they don't have a diverse range of team in their company actually looking at real problems. Like I can't tell you how many um, podcasts I listen to where all these startups by minorities are like, oh, the investors didn't believe in our product because they didn't think this was exactly. They didn't think this was important to anyone, right? They didn't think hair products was a big market. They didn't think female products was a big market, which is dumb because you realize that that's like a huge $1 billion market, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, but it's because you have all these like, say plainly, white old men who don't have any of this, who don't realize, the opportunity there. So when you have that diversity in thought, that diversity in background, you can solve more important problems, you can solve bigger problems, and you can solve them better. And then you spoke about transferable experience. Definitely, um, when you get people, when you try to find talent based on their potential, which is what people are actually trying to do, right?
Right.
Today, people try to hire for your potential, but because it's really hard to do that, at least in the normal way of doing things, then you end up looking at their signals, and that's why I mentioned that a long time ago, is that places like higher education, college is a signal. You know, a lot of times they look for experience because they're really looking to see where you worked at before. Did you work at Google? Did you work at Pinterest? Did you work at Twitter? All these big name companies. They try to see if you worked at those types of places because that's a signal. Those types of places tend to have talented people. So if you work there, maybe you're talented too, right? That's the best way they can find about potential. So they look at these signals: your degree, where you worked at, and where you're from. But what that does is it decreases your diversity, because these people, they all tend to have the same background. And so you limit your own talent pool, you limit your own, culture and stuff like that. And so when you find somebody who's actually different, who doesn't have a degree, who didn't work at these companies, who were just like a call service agent at some, random company, or who worked at a small company, small business, then you don't give them a chance because you don't see their potential. You don't realize what their potential is. And so for me, I would hire people, and this is from talking to probably hundreds of hiring managers. This is from actually hiring people myself, is that when you look at people's potential, you want to look at, number one, how they think. So you want to ask them questions that are related to, what are your interests? What gets you curious, and what do you do with that? Once you ask them that, and you hear how they talk about the things that they're passionate about, or at least curious in, then you have a way better understanding of, how they're actually working your job place. And then number two is I want to say um, just giving them a chance, right? So quite for like, you may not be able to have a good understanding of, like, a whiteboard is kind of iffy, right? Some people are really good with whiteboard challenges and you can get a great understanding of their potential through that, but some people aren't. So just giving people a chance, like, hey, work at my company for a month or 3 months and see where that goes. Once you get that, then you can give more people a chance, and then you can actually see what people's potential are. But if you can't do any of that, at the very least, I will look at what they're doing right now. That's the biggest thing. Like for me, when I was hiring people, I said, hey, you clearly don't have, of course you don't have any experience in virtual reality. It's a new technology. So what are your interests, right? And then what do you do with that? So I would ask, if they're like on our job application, I would actually put video game experience. Like, have you played video games, right? And then I ask them. So when they come in here and they say, I say, what games have you played? And if they list like the simple stuff like 2K and like Fortnite, I know that you probably aren't that passionate, because you can like Fortnite, but unless you're saying like, oh, I play Fortnite and I do this strategy, this blah blah blah. Unless you go into that, then I'm like, okay. But if you're just saying, oh, I play Call of Duty or Fortnite or whatever, I'm just like, I know you're kind of casual with it, and I don't want you to be casual in my business, right? I know that may seem weird to people, but what you do in your everyday life comes with, impacts what you do in your professional life. It's the same thing. It's just a matter of focus. If you focus on playing video games, on playing really interesting video games in a really interesting way, you're probably going to do your work in a really interesting way too. Because it's just human behavior. So those are the types of, ways I would look at diversity and experience and stuff like that. Think that's everything. Oh yeah, you mentioned executives, um, in terms of having people around you that are able to, uh, like you said with Devil Wears Prada. Yeah.
Yeah.
um in terms of that, definitely that's super important. Like there's a huge, I guess, push for finding people who are actually not scared to tell executives, no, we shouldn't go there, right? um but granted, that is dependent on the culture of the place. Like if it's a healthy culture and the executive is like, please tell me when I'm wrong, please, give me feedback, then yes, you should definitely be out there telling them, hey, we shouldn't go there. Hey, the data shows that this is not working out. Hey, we should focus on this. I done that at the arcade. I mentioned that in my pitch deck. Yeah, go ahead.
I apologize, man. I apologize. I have to hop in another meeting.
Oh yeah,
Someone just
yeah,
on Slack. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
this was a great conversation. Damn, I wish we could have turned this into a podcast.
I was recording it.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Have to hop at another meeting, but this is great, man. I
Uh-huh.
wholeheartedly agree. But with that being said, have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Can I put this on my channel?
Definitely. Go
All
ahead.
right, yeah. But yeah, thanks, man. Thanks. See ya. So that was cool. Um, I guess yeah, I'm gonna make this my video for today. So yeah, welcome to another episode of Becoming a Techno Wizard. And this was a conversation. I just literally just hit record in the middle of my conversation with my friend Kerry, who is a fellow designer. He's trying to be a product designer. He went to Lambda. I know Lambda, right? But he like you heard from him, he's been doing his best to try to get what he can out of this field, this education, and he's super passionate about all this stuff. So we have a lot of types of conversations in this realm, in this scheme, in this, you know conversations like this. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. What I was going to say with that last point was that he was mentioning things about the Devil Wears Prada, and how, certain people, good executives, good leaders, are looking for people who will tell them, who are not just yes men, who would tell them when they're going wrong and when to self correct, because a lot of times that is a problem with power, right? Um, where if a person is powerful, a lot of times their opinions, their ideas will just um, steamroll. Excuse me, will steamroll through other people's opinions, through other people's experiences. Rather, where you have a bunch of experts around you who would tell you, "Hey, this is not the way to go," but because you're the power, you're the CEO, you're the CFO, you're the CIO, whatever, because you're the big executive, they're going to listen to you. Even if you're just a manager, if you're the middle manager and they're below you, you can fire them or you can mess with their paycheck. So they're going to listen to you. They're going to be like, oh yeah, whatever you say, right? they're going to, they're not going to say no to you. They're not going to give you real feedback. And you really need that, especially when you're in those bigger organizations where those other people below you are the ones actually directly interfacing with the users, such as customer service. Customer service gets so much bad, like they get sidelined so much, and it's stupid because these are the people who are actually talking to your users every single day. These are people who know the real problems, who are hearing those real problems every single day. And if you're not going to listen to them, it's only a matter of time before your business suffers for it. So as a designer, or as anyone really trying to get hired at these places, you can't be afraid to be like, um, I'm going to tell real feedback. I'm going to tell real criticism. Of course, you want to toe that line because you're not an expert. So you can't say for sure, like, hey, this is a bad way to go, because you don't have much experience. But what you bring into it as a newbie is fresh eyes. That's what I think that's what one of the things Carrie likes about my case study. One of the things I like about my case study, one of the things a lot of people like about my case study for the arcade, is that in the beginning, I've treated it as a service design project. And in the beginning, I explicitly say that I came in as a fresh, like, newbie, right? I didn't know anything about, arcades, about this business, about even, working at a front desk, right? This was my first time at a retail position. And so I was basically just gave the fresh eye. So I asked, how does this work? How do we talk to people on the phone? How do we take cash? How do we, split payments between different people? How do we manage the inventory? What is the cleaning, maintenance? How often do we clean this, that, and the other? All these questions about really simple things or even more complicated things. I would just ask questions. I would just observe what's going on, and that's your strength as a new designer, as a new person in a field, is that you can ask questions and people will be like, yeah, he's new, of course he should be asking questions, right? If you don't ask questions, then people are gonna be like, what you doing, you're acting like you know things when you don't. So don't be afraid to ask questions, because not only will that help you quickly become familiar with things, but that will also help other people to be like, huh, maybe we should do this a little differently. Like when I ask questions about, hey, how often should we do this cleaning, right? They were like, we usually just do it every week, or just, whenever we see it's dirty. But then, we had this new guy coming in and he's doing all the cleaning. And it's like, maybe that's not too fair. Maybe we should all be cleaning, right? And just that simple thing led us to create a spreadsheet where everybody is cleaning, where we wrote down every single thing in the arcade that needs to be cleaned and how often it should be cleaned, and then put a name next to, who did the cleaning last. So now you solve the problem of making sure everything is being cleaned, which is really important for a front desk, for a brick and mortar place where people are coming in. And then number two, you're solving the problem um, of frequency, like how often things are being cleaned. Like sometimes you can clean the bathroom, you have to clean that every week, maybe even multiple times a week. But something like the front windows, you only have to clean that like every 2 weeks or something like that, right? Or something like another thing like the filter or something like that, you clean that every month, right? Everything is a different range of things. So when you actually write these down, you start to realize that there were things that you're doing that didn't make sense, that were ineffective, that was a waste, or just you haven't done it enough. And then number three, you also solve the thing of teamwork, right? Making sure everybody's pitching in and cleaning the arcade or cleaning your business or whatever. So when you go in as a newbie and you ask these questions, it encourages people to think about them, to think about the processes in a new way. So ask questions of your executives, of your managers, of the other your other teammates and stuff like that, and that will go a long way in making and bringing value to the organization. Again, that is assuming you actually have a healthy culture. If you have a culture where your executives is the last word and whatever they say goes, that's not a healthy culture. And so, of course, when you ask questions, or when you do this or when you do that to try to shake the boat, you're going to get a black mark. And quite frankly, I don't want to work at those businesses. I'm guessing you probably don't want to either. You might think that you have to, because there's a lot of places like that, but you don't, because there's a lot of really good places out there too. And if you're actually looking for them, it'll be easier to find them. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. It was really fun to have it. I was really worried about what I should talk about in today's video. So when Kerry called me and then he mentioned like halfway through the conversation, man, I wish we turned this to a podcast. And I was like, oh, bet. And just hit record. So yeah, let me know what you think. And thanks for watching. And hopefully you're listening. Have a good day. Bye-bye.